In this conversation with Douglas Lim, founder of Memberply, we're going to talk about the journey from your own personal problem you want to solve to become a software as a service company. And Doug's journey is quite turbulent. He is going to talk about his experience with hiring a co-founder and paying him out of his own pocket and how this eventually didn't work out for them, and how he got back having a job and also spent some time before and after work to work on his product and vision. So this is really interesting because we are not just talking about how it is to grind and do something. We are also really talking about how to stay focused, how to wear many hats, especially if you're a developer. And we were also talking about how it is no longer to be a freelancer or an employee or an agency, because as a software as a service company, you have to productize your services, which means to learn to say no to your customers, even though it might hurt your heart because you have been taught differently all these years before. So without further ado, I hope you're going to enjoy the following conversation between Doug and me. Why are you on this podcast and how did you come up with the idea for your startup?
I think one of the biggest reasons was just to show the different side of creating a software as a service startup. When you look at X, you look at a lot of social media, it can paint a distorted image of what it takes to be successful. You just put in all this hard work and then you're going to make it. I have a startup called Memberply. It's a Shopify app. It runs as a software as a service that allows any store on Shopify, and also if you're not on Shopify, and allows you to create a paid membership. You can charge customers a monthly fee, and our app will set up everything so that you can deliver benefits to those members.
Cool. This sounds really interesting because we have a couple of customers where they're like, oh, we want to build some online shop. And then I'm okay, let's define build correctly. Let's make sure that you don't want to build a whole ecosystem around e-commerce, but let's go and see what is already out there. And usually we recommend people to go with a Shopify because there are so many people like you who are building apps on top of Shopify and services around it, which is tremendously helpful for a lot of people. I want to hear what was the thing which was missing on Shopify where you were like, okay, we need this and everyone needs it. I want to build it as a service on top of Shopify. What was the initial explosion, which basically brought your company to daylight?
Before we launched this app, we actually had an e-commerce store. This is my wife and I. We actually ran a crochet subscription box. We grew it to be one of the biggest in the US. And every month we would send out a crochet box to our customers. And so we learned from having that store how important, just like a SaaS startup, is having that recurring revenue. And I think that was the light bulb moment for us because a lot of e-com stores don't have recurring revenue. That's one. And then secondly, not all stores lend themselves to be able to create a subscription. So for example, if you sell car tires, it's very hard to put that on a subscription because you may only need that once every 3 years, once every 4 years to replace your tires on your car. But what would happen if you could create a membership and charge a recurring fee for it? In that membership, you didn't have to sell a product that you had to send out on a recurring basis. You could do something digital. Give some digital content. You could give some discounts. You could give free shipping. One of the benefits that we have is that you could convert a membership fee into store credit. If I pay you $5 a month to your membership on your store, I'll get $5 in store credit every month that I can use to buy from your store. So it was kind of that intersection to go, we could really help e-com store owners based on our experience to grow their subscription revenue. And we can apply it for all stores, not just those that don't have a product that you can sell on a subscription type basis. So it's the turning point for us to go, yes, we need to create this. We actually made it for ourselves and then decided to launch it as a product.
Fascinating and fantastic to hear because it sounds so familiar what and I have been doing in the past. Like 10, 15 years ago, we were trading domain names on websites. And at some point we were like, back then domain trading, a lot of people, they were buying domain names and then park them. So for people who are not familiar with parking, because it died down at some point, You would type in a website and then there were just a bunch of links and ads, no content whatsoever. But people were hosting those parking websites. They would, every time someone clicks the link, earn a few dollar cents, for instance, depending on the topic. We were in this business and we were like, we need to find some middle ground where we have some websites we built into like proper websites. And then there's this long tail where we just want to flip them. We realized, okay, not all of them are actually suitable for parking. There must be some middle ground. And then we came up with like, okay, let's put up some content which is related to the domain. And then we can put up also some Google AdSense, for instance. And then we developed this way how to manage, because our domain portfolio grew quite big. At some point, it was over 10,000 domain names.
Wow.
So
It's
you
huge.
can imagine there's no way that you use WordPress.
Yeah.
So we developed this tool. First idea was to have it mainly as a CMS, and then we pivoted into the domain name trading. So eventually the whole idea turned into smart domain sale, where you could list your domains. Either you keep it as it is with a nice landing page where people could reach out to you, or if you connect with Stripe or PayPal, you could directly buy them off you. We built that. At some point, we're like, you can actually open it up, make it available for everyone, because there are so many people who are quite unhappy with the existing solutions. Let's open it up and make it available. And it was quite an interesting journey, because you came with like this scratching your own itch. We did the same. But what we didn't realize is the marketing effort you have to put in, the customer service effort you have to put in. Then also, if you build things just for you, you're holding yourself responsible for like availability and stuff like that. Things are sometimes not really working that well. So you live with certain quirks around the system. But if you have customers who are using the system at least once a week, logging in, trying something out, changing something, then you get emails like, hey, there's this thing missing on your API. And hey, this is not working correctly. Hey, I uploaded 1,000 domain names here. Why aren't they active yet? And then you're like, okay, we have to dig in. So you suddenly turn from it's a byproduct into, oh my God, now I'm not only the CTO, product manager, and developer. You also turn into the customer service person. And I also started attending events where people were talking about features and things like that. So you also turn into like a salesperson. You have so many hats to wear suddenly. So maybe you can tell me something about your experience when you were like, okay, this is so cool. I need to make it available for all the other people who are looking for this. What are the challenges you weren't anticipating when you were launching?
Oh, Christian, I relate to everything you said there. I think because you have so much experience as a startup founder and knowing what it's like. I loved what you said about wearing many hats. I'm the developer of the app. So we're bootstrapped and literally built the whole thing from ground up, being a developer, being the product manager or the product owner. So what is the UI going to look like? What are the requirements? Especially early on when you have some validation, but then you're like, is that enough to keep going? Like, what's next? And then also navigating when you're on someone else's platform, Shopify, they change their API very, very frequently. There are things where they'll change something, you don't actually know about it, and then something breaks, and then you have to figure it out. You have to adapt to their rules. But then on the plus side, you get great support from Shopify. Recently, we got promoted in their Shopify guide for apps that use store credit. We were blessed to be presented as one of their apps that use that. We've had so many challenges, Christian. Like before this startup, I had another startup and I had a co-founder who, so I wasn't being paid full-time salary, but he was. We were diverting all the money from the business into his full-time salary. And then I find out for a whole year, he had taken the code and launched a competing product whilst he was being paid a full-time salary. Like my wife and I like to think we're really good people. We come from a strong background of faith in God and we want to bless others. We're not here to scam people or do anything like that. And it just shocked us to the core when we found out he was doing that. So it's stuff like that you don't ever prepare for. Kind of like finding out your partner is cheating, because they often say your business partner is like your wife or your husband or...
Wow. How did you recover from this? What were your next steps? I cannot really imagine sitting on the ground thinking, WTF, what happened to me in this moment? Why is this person I'm giving like it's your personal money, right? It might be
Absolutely.
a different story if there was venture capital involved, which still not great, not a good excuse for such a behavior, but still it's your own money, which would frustrate me even more hearing that. It's frustrating me right now if I hear something like that where people just grifting someone else's money. So yeah, what were the next steps? Why are you still here? This is a setback, but it shouldn't deter me from pursuing running my own business. How did you get up again?
Oh, that's such a good question, Christian. I'm not going to lie. When my wife and I first found out, I think that first night I got maybe 30 minutes of sleep. My wife got less than me because the thoughts just race through your mind. Yeah, everything you said, why me? Why did you do this? We really looked after you. We gave you everything. Why would you do this? And even if we didn't look after you, just morally, ethically, as a good human, why would you do this? We were pretty close to giving up because my mistake was, so he developed it in a tech language called Ruby on Rails, and it was using Ruby on Rails in an MVC type framework, model view controller framework. Now, this Ruby on Rails is completely foreign to me. I'm a developer, but I've never used Ruby on Rails. I should have realized that if anything went wrong, I could take over it. But unfortunately, in this case, I couldn't. So yeah, we're very close to giving up. But as I mentioned before, we have this massive faith in God. I know that God had this assignment for us to carry through, because the whole point of our business is, yes, to look after ourselves, but then we want to be able to use those funds to bless others and to do a lot of good will ministry projects around the world. That's why we're effectively doing it. Yeah, so we're very close to giving up, but because of this assignment from God, we didn't give up. Here was a situation, right? Married, and we have 3 kids under the age of 10. When we paid him a full-time salary, it ripped a hole in us financially. Okay, what are we going to do? So I went back to full-time work, got a job, tried to get that bit stable at least. And then once we did that, got up at 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning, and I'd code for 2 hours every day, Monday to Friday, just 2 hours. I had to rewrite the whole thing. We actually pivoted into Memberply, my current startup, and I rewrote that whole thing back end in .NET and front end in React.
Wow.
Took about 8-9 months to finally launch it, rebuilt and pivoted from ground up. So yeah, when we got that first customer, oh man, was that a celebration. It was a lot of resilience. I think the whole thing I learned from this journey, and I know you've been through this as well, Christian, it's just doing a bit every day. You know, like all these books come out, like Atomic Habits, The Slight Edge, The Compound Effect. They all say the same thing, which is just being consistent. So I learned that from previous mistakes where I would just I would just work really hard for 2 whole days, burn myself out, and then not work for the whole week. It's like, no. Just do a bit every day, but consistently. And I never failed to miss a day. And then I blinked, and then 8-9 months, the app is up and running.
Wow. I can really feel the pain and also just getting up and doing something. Also taking a job. We've been there before as well, where we tried projects and tried to build a company and suddenly saw this other person we want to work with as a business partner wasn't open and transparent about things. We had such a huge setback. We need to recover from this because we burned all the money. We did a lot of things to get stuff from the ground. We relocated and then going back and then just to catch a breath. Okay, let's go back to freelancing for a while. Just fill up the treasure chest, basically, so that you have some money. A year later, we launched our platform because we did the same thing. We need to, work. We need to get money in, but at the same time, we need to allocate some time each day. In our case was, okay, we have a few days full-time work, and then there was 1-2 days left in the week where we're like, let's focus on the next thing we want to work on. So I can fully resonate. And it teaches you so much such setbacks, because I remember in the beginning when something happened, you would be like panicking. You were like, what happened? What happened? What should we do? What should we do? How to fix this? What is the next step? You get to a point where when things are exploding, I remember in one project where people started, it was actually quite funny. We introduced for sending out emails, which was in the beginning of the project a huge pain because some of the developer was wrapping a try-catch around sending emails, and then sometimes the catch clause wouldn't do anything. So for the not so technical people, you get an error, and then it's like, I don't care. You don't even retry. You just ignore it. We went from that to sending out emails using a message queue where we have workers which can then consume like emails to be sent out. And we would collect information back from our mail transfer, like SMTP as a service. We were using one of those services and integrated this feedback. And at some point I was like, we get like 250 errors a day. And people were like, what is happening? I'm like, we are sending out 18 million emails, so This is nothing. And then we analyzed this traffic. It was like 95% of those bounce emails were people's email inbox was full. At some point, you get used to feeling what is a big issue and what is, okay, we have to deal with it. Maybe you can also talk a little bit about this learning from every single issue where you didn't even have this feeling because you were experienced enough from life. Okay, this is not a biggie. But at least my experience was like so many years ago, oh, this is the end of the world to, okay, we have a bigger fish to fry here. So what about those 250 emails not being delivered? So okay, so what? No one is complaining.
I love that. I love that, Christian. I'm actually very similar to yourself. Me, a couple of years ago, would have gone, oh no, that's it, end of the world. But after what my wife and I went through, I don't think anything could get worse than that. So yeah, I'm exactly like you. When something happens now, it's okay. Let's find the root of the issue. Let's break it down, take it one step at a time. And it's actually been a real blessing having developed the code from ground up, because I can tell already from the way you talk, you know your stuff, right? You understand architecture, scaling and performance. And I can geek out about this because I'm the same way as you, Christian. I look at these things. And the problem I had before was when I was working with my ex-co-founder, because he built the product and I was the product manager / marketing guy and sales guy. The problem that I had was whenever a customer would say, okay, let's add this new feature, and I'd pass it over to him. Can you add this new feature because the customer has asked for it? And this is one of our biggest customers. Can you do it? I'd always get pushback. And I don't know if this is a typical developer thing, but he would come to me and say, he makes every excuse under the sun. Oh, it's too hard. It's no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. No, we don't want to do that. Anyway, I came to find out that he was saying that because on the side, he was adding those features for his version of the app. So he was purposely not doing it for us so he could do it for him.
No.
So it was crazy when I found this out. But now, having developed it, pivoted and developed Memberply, it's actually the best feeling when you know that if something needs doing or fixing, I don't get pushback. It just gets done. So yeah, I've got friends who are founders as well that aren't technical and they've been held ransom by their technical team. Thankfully, having rebuilt the whole thing and pivoted it to Memberply, I've been able to make any changes that we need, add new features, and there's no more pushback. I can just get it done, which has been a real blessing. I do admit it is tough not having someone technical. I can see why when startups go to VC fund, those VC funds will often say you need a tech co-founder for this reason. It's been one crazy journey, Christian, just to get to this point.
It gives you a feeling how you can cope with setbacks in the future as well. So whenever there's something happening again, you have a better judgment on, okay, it sounds big now, but like you said, it's setback, think about it, cool down, and then build an action plan how to fix it. Now I can speak from experience as well. So many things happen in my life, and every time something is happening, I'm like, okay, let's see. Also, what you said regarding the features. The last time I had this big project with a team, I think it was reciprocated that people felt like, okay, there's not some creative guy being the product manager or the team lead or the client or whatever, and they're like fantasizing features, but someone who is actually knows stuff, happens to know them. I could feel it in the team because it gave a completely different dynamic on how you would work on features. You would brainstorm like, okay, how can we get this done? Is there anything to consider? The team knows they can bring up real issues and be upfront like, okay, this is easy to be implemented because X, Y, and Z. So that always, I had the feeling I had a good dynamic in my teams where I felt like I can trust them. They can trust me that I'm blocking BS coming from the business side sometimes. And sometimes I'm then also like, okay, this is not just BS. This is a compliance requirement. We have to fulfill it. Granted, it is still BS, but we have to get this done. Let's go further into having some technical expertise in the room. What is your opinion on all those AI agents out there? Like I've been using ChatGPT since it got released in 2022. So, and I was quite mind blown, like how knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is confident, that's for sure. And there's so many things where it was quite spot on and giving me interesting insights. And I've been also using Copilot and recently ChatGPT Codex to work on a few hobby projects. What's your opinion? Is it a valuable alternative to having someone where you can at least having some sparring about some technical things? What do you think about all this AI craze and tech teams?
I am a massive fan and have almost finished a new feature of Memberply using an AI agent, using Codex. I've learned a lot from it in terms of it's been an absolute massive blessing to have basically another developer there. It codes better than me, if not, like, it's just a superior coder. The thing that I've learned from the whole AI agent thing is I'm seeing a lot online, and you can totally relate to this, Christian. They're calling it vibe coding, where you vibe it and you get it to code. These non-technical people are saying, oh, look, I've created a whole massive app. It's fantastic. But the problem is any experienced developer will tell you as soon as you scale that app, it's going to crash. It looks good from a face value, like a house from the front. The house looks great, but as you live in that house longer, you're going to get leaks in the water, you're going to get walls crumble, so many issues that you're going to find. And what I have found that has really helped a lot is take, for example, this new feature we're about to launch. I've laid the framework for the AI agent, so I've coded the initial parts, and then when it gets in there, it can see what I've done. It knows, okay, you've coded it this way, you want it this way. Unlike you, Christian, I've used GitHub Copilot, ChatGPT, and if you give it very general type statement saying, write a test for me here, it's going to just write whatever test it thinks you want. Or if you ask it to write code, it's going to use a data structure that you might not want it to use. It's just going to pluck it out of the air and go, yeah, I'm going to use this. So I've learned you have to be stupidly explicit with it and say, I want you to do this using this data structure in this way so that I can achieve this. So it does take a bit longer, but I've had to change my mindset that it's not a magic wand that you can just flick and it's just going to do it for you. You have to actually get in there and do some work, but it will save you hours upon hours of time. So what I think is going to happen, and I think we all have to prepare for it because I'm a software developer as well, I think there are going to be job losses. I think a lot of the junior devs are going to be pretty much let go. And I think companies will keep some junior devs, but to take those junior devs to grow them into a senior dev that can then look over this code that an AI agent is going to create. You would obviously always look at the PR or the code that is generated. You would never let it go into production, closing your eyes, thinking that it's going to be perfect. So that's my take. I think it's going to be the way of the future, but you'll still need senior developers having a look. And what it means if you're going to learn it in uni is you're going to be probably learning data structures, performance, security, scaling, architectures, more than the semantics of a programming language.
I'm having at least every week, at least one conversation about this topic because a friend of mine, I'm usually go on a run with him, and at least once a week we are talking about this topic, AI agents and how they will change the landscape of developing things. And his background, he studied math. He's also on Udemy. He's producing courses on AI and everything around it. He has been doing this for a long time. So back then it was called machine learning. Now it's AI. So quite interesting because I think, like you said, it's negatively impacting junior developers a lot because there's so much code. I've seen it myself. So I have one client, they were coming back, texting me every time, some consultation, easygoing things hey, this problem, how would you solve it? They completely went silent and they only pop up again whenever they get stuck with ChatGPT. So I learned ChatGPT is eating that cake. I noticed okay, it's no longer I can give them easy advice because ChatGPT can do it too, frankly, faster than me because it is 24/7. And I've been experimenting a lot with ChatGPT and agentic AI to have some developer on a hobby project, which it is not like React or Node.js or TypeScript or anything. It is a re-implementation of games from the 90s, which was initially written in C and ported to JavaScript. I'm rewriting the whole game logic. in new JavaScript, what you would find on Stack Overflow or Reddit asked all the time. So I can clearly see how ChatGPT has issues on certain topics. Sometimes it's amazing. Like I had a pre-generated array of floats and it had some weird name. It was vertex normals. I was like, okay, I have no clue what it is. Floating point numbers, normals, value between 0 and 1. So I was giving it to ChatGPT. I was like, try to figure out what is the structure behind it. And then suddenly it was like, oh, it looks like the Y coordinate. It's always stuck around this point. It might be like a light source if you project it in one direction. And I was like, yeah, it's definitely being used in things related to dynamic lighting. So interesting. And it was also giving me a formula how to regenerate this array. So I was like mind blown. So sometimes it discovers things where I'm like, okay, would have taken me, I don't know, months. And then there are things where I'm like, hey, because I was doing the same thing like you said, I was giving it an outline like, hey, this is how I ported the NPC dog and zombie and soldier. So I gave it like a clear structure how to implement entity classes regarding enemies in that game. And then I asked it to implement the rest using the old code. Like, hey, this is the old code. This is what I ported. Here's my README file explaining how to port things. And I started doing it. It was quite confident. It was generating 18 files. And I was like, going over it, it extracted the right things. I was like, oh, pretty cool. It discovered the structure how I was doing it. And then I went over the state machine because every model, every 3D object had a frame and you had to define every frame in the state machine because some of the frames were related to a function call. So on certain moves, the enemy would do a grunt sound, for instance, or like if there's an attack move on the third frame, it would actually do an impact. So things like that. And I was looking at it and I was like, it completely ignored all those function calls per frame in the state machine. And then I tried 10 times reiterating like, hey, look again how the states are defined. What is missing? What is wrong? I really had to be explicit and was like pushing it in the face like, hey, this is the code. This is wrong. And this is right. Do it for the rest. And then at some point I did it for like 3 classes out of the 18. So, and then I gave up. I was like, okay, I'm faster if I'm doing it myself. Turn on some techno music, get a coffee, and then I crunch it myself. There's definitely things where I'm mind blown because there's so many things I'm using it like, hey, give me for Google App Scripts, JavaScript code, how to consume API. This is the structure. This is my prototype. And then I need to fill in some cells here and there. Bam, 95% ready. I needed to adjust here and there a small value or a type or whatever. And then it worked. It's insane. I don't know where we are going regarding those agentic AI. So my running friend, he is always like, there might be smaller, more specialized models, which don't know about chemistry, but they are definitely proficient in Node.js, for example. So maybe this is a trend we're going to see more and more, that behind the scenes of ChatGPT, it will automatically see like, okay, this context is definitely about chemistry and physics. So we need to use these models to get in a proficient answer. Or it's like, oh, this is straightforward TypeScript, Vue.js, easy. We're going to use these models. So there's definitely some optimization development going on. You can also see it in the salaries companies are willing to pay. So I heard the other day there's a decline on average salaries in new job postings. So this is new. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's so true, Christian. And a lot of those CEOs of different companies have come out and said, we're not going to hire anyone else if it can be done with AI. So they've explicitly said, you have to use AI. And if you really can't use it, then we will hire someone. And the rate it's gone, like it's been, I blinked in 6 months, it's the agentic AI that's just taken off. I can imagine another 6 months and another year, it's going to be ridiculously good. But I was chuckling when you were saying it before because I did come up with a few situations when AI is, sometimes when you ask AI, it comes across as that person that, I don't know if you've ever worked with someone like this, that because the way they talk so confidently, they can say, yeah, it's because of this, or they just sound so confident. Everyone in the room believes them. Then when you go back and look at what they're talking about, you realize they have no idea what they're talking about. They just seem really confident.
Oh, yeah.
So I found sometimes AI is like that. It comes across as this really confident, oh, it's because of this. Then you go through it and you went, hang on, no. And I figured out it wasn't what you had said it was. It was this one line of code that was far better if I had spent the time going through the problem myself and figuring it out than just getting AI to work it out. So totally relate.
It's going to be interesting speaking of this learning experience. I mean, there's so many times where I feel like I'm stuck and you do this mental offloading that you go like, oh, I don't want to think hard on this topic now. I'm going to go to and ask it to solve it for me, because we all have been juniors at some point, right? So we all went through struggle, pain, mistakes, and we all learned from them more or less. So now this is being taken out. So sometimes I'm really wondering, is it now a good idea that I ask ChatGPT for everything and don't take the time to really follow the way to get to the solution? Because then I end up going to ChatGPT often, more and more again, because I'm like, what was it again? I need to look it up the third time. How do I consume an API in Google Apps Script? But yeah, it's going to be interesting how it's going to change the way how we approach problems and how we are actually growing from them. So yeah, do you think, like, how do you feel about this? Like in future, if you're working, I mean, you're also wipe coding. I love the term, by the way, wipe coding through features and things on your product. How will it impact your company?
I already see a lot of people saying how they've had job losses, and my heart definitely goes out for families and people that lost their job because an AI agent can do it better. I think it's going to be really good for the solopreneur, guys like myself, whereas before the problem that you always have when you do a startup is you try and do everything initially. You're like the product manager, customer service rep, you're like the salesperson, you're like the programmer, you're like the marketer, you're like this and that. You wear 20 million hats. But then as you scale, that's obviously not sustainable. You have to start offloading some of those hats. And one of those biggest hats is development, right? It's hard to get your mind with the context switching of so many things you got to do to go from code where your mind's going to be so fully focused on it. Well, for me anyway, one of those developers that need to really focus to switch from that into like, oh, let me write some content for marketing, or let me write a post for social media to market the app. I think it's going to be really good for those sort of businesses, those sort of startups. It's going to be an absolute blessing for that. But for the bigger companies, it's going to be good for them and their shareholders, but it's also going to affect, like you said, the junior developers, even mid, even senior. I read a report somewhere that they reckon it's going to be 20% increase in job losses. It's going to be tough. It's going to be crazy and tough. And I don't know what the solution to that is. It's tough. What do you think?
Thinking about it, you can compare it to like the industrialization, right? Where suddenly like people doing things gonna be replaced by machines doing things. So we are not gonna go back there. Also the horses pulling cars, they also effectively lost their job, except for some occasions like a wedding. So I think those jobs also here, they might not return. But it reminds me of a quote I read from, do you remember the instant messenger ICQ?
The one that went,
it's been a long time. Yes.
Yeah, I know very well. And then you'd look at ICQ next to Netscape Navigator.
I remember reading a quote from one of the founders of ICQ, and he said like, we were all unemployed, so what should we do? We founded ICQ. I think this is going to happen here as well. So there's going to be a lot of people who have interest in tech. Granted, there's going to be a lot of people who only went in tech because of the high salaries. I saw them a lot. They were clocking in at 9, taking a break at 12, going home at 5, and there was no growth in them. There's still people who are really curious about technology and stuff. And I think they will build something because they're interested in this process of building something. And so they will learn from that, and they might turn into the next SQ, hopefully without this awful sound. But, they will build products. They will try to invent something. And this will then in return, like, create new opportunities for other people. I mean, we've seen it with social media. So who would thought that like a photo app called Instagram would turn into an ecosystem of people promoting products, propagating ideas. So I see more like an upside. And for us developing our own products or software as a service companies, we can finally relax a little bit. I totally feel this context switching. Whenever I have a long day of coding, I cannot jump on a call because I am somewhere else with my mind. I also cannot write a LinkedIn post. I can maybe write a LinkedIn post ranting about why something wasn't working in JavaScript again, but it's not really contributing to the bigger picture here. So yeah, this is really nice to see that you can offload some stuff to like agentic AI and say like, hey, I need this done. Here's my sketch for an UI. Please produce the React.js code, so that you don't have to jump into this mode. Like, okay, we are in front end now. There's downs clearly. People, they're confused. They don't know where to go, what to do next. But this is like, kind of feels like a recession. I mean, we are in a recession depending on the market you're in, but it's definitely giving out new cards, and then you can play a new game in some regard. This is going to be an interesting change. This is not going to turn against us. The previous guest also said something really interesting about AI. There's the scare of like, okay, AI is turning into AGI, and then it becomes sentient and it's going to kill us all. We humans, we can still plug the cable from the computer. It's not coming up with its own energy like, oh, I'm going to destroy now the humans because they want to take my power source.
Yeah.
Be there waiting for input. And then they're going to respond based on a statistical model.
It's interesting. You know, the movie Terminator came out like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It feels like we're close to Skynet becoming self-aware. It's like 20 years ago, you go, nah, that would never happen. Never happen. But the closer we get to AI becoming what it is, I agree with you. I don't think the human can just plug the cable. It will never get to that point where it becomes like a virus that can just go into your home or your computer and take over. I don't think it'll ever get to that stage. But yeah, it's just interesting how that movie 20, 30 years ago was a really cool idea, really cool storyline. And then it's like, okay, 20, 30 years later, it's plausible. Like it's a lot closer to it than back then. Interesting.
Like I say, I think right now, it's a perfect opportunity for people who have an idea. They can go and try execute them. I mean, I think it was last year I wrote a plugin for WordPress.
Oh, awesome.
And I hate WordPress. And
I'm not a fan
I went to ChatGPT. I was like, hey, I need this plugin because these are my requirements. And it was still, I had like 2 hours, 3 hours going back and forth to get it done. But I wasn't enduring the pain of boilerplating WordPress plugin and go through the documentation. I could ask ChatGPT, hey, this is what I need, and please hook it up. This is definitely gonna help us who want to build a product and don't know where to start to build a product. This is definitely a game changer.
When you wrote that plugin, did you have to write it in PHP, or can it be agnostic, like you could just use whatever language you wanted to? Just out of curiosity from my own.
No, WordPress is, I always call it the Windows 95 of CMS. It runs like all plugins in privileged mode. It is written in PHP. It got access to everything. And yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting because with Shopify, it's agnostic how you build your app. You can build your app in PHP, Remix, .NET, Node.js, whatever you want. So that's definitely one thing I like about it. You're not tied into a specific tool.
It's interesting because PHP was always said to be dead. Like everyone was calling it dead. No one uses PHP anymore. And then it is still up there, live and kicking. There are still releases. There's still an ecosystem around. So yeah, I mean, all the haters, they were wrong. I'm not using it. I haven't used it in ages except this last project. Yeah, it's still around. Shopify is an interesting platform. I usually recommend a lot of people who want to go into e-commerce use Shopify because you have other things to focus on. Having a shop is one thing of your business. You need to source your products. You need to advertise them correctly. Usually if you start, you have your warehouse at home. It's your basement, maybe your living room or bedroom where you keep your boxes full of products. But at some point you have to think about your 3PL or some warehouse. So I'm always like, guys, don't overthink this. Go use Shopify. Focus on what is important. Is it the sourcing of your products? Is it your marketing? What is your strength? Maybe you are really good at getting people to buy product. Use Shopify because then you don't have to worry about scaling and compatibility across devices and whatnot. Shopify, in my opinion, is usually a good solution to grow with.
Yeah, you're spot on, Christian. That's exactly right. When you're setting up an online store, obviously you're wearing so many hats. And with physical products, having done it myself, it's such a different type of business versus software. You've got to deal with shipping, things break in transit, tariffs, all sorts of different things, taxes, import tax. Like it's just such a different kettle of fish. People copying your product, especially if you source from China, Chinese New Year, like they shut down for like a month or two. It's pretty different. And I think that's one of the mistakes we made trying to launch on a different platform when you can just launch on Shopify and get it up and running within an hour or two. And I've got so many apps like ours that you can plug into your store. Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Let's maybe, if you think about the journey building a software as a service company, what were other challenges you had in your journey, like technical or something where you were really not anticipating this is going to happen, but now I have to deal with it because I have backlog of bad experience and things that exploded. So I'm pretty sure you have too. Maybe there's some really fun one or somewhere you took the most out of it and learned a lot.
I've got a massive list of issues and things that have popped up. So I think some of the things that I've discovered is if you're the product owner, so product owner meaning you're basically the person that's going to come up with the ideas, that are going to listen to your customers to get the ideas on new features and stuff like that, and you have someone technical coding it, underestimating the time that is required to actually come up with that. So features require a lot of deep thinking. If a customer says, I want this, or you discover in your, proof of concept that, hey, this would be a great feature, you have to come up with you have to come up with the flow. You have to think of edge cases where, look, if this works in this particular scenario, what will happen? You have to think of the business side. Should we just do it for this client? They are a big client, or are we pigeonholing ourselves into this one feature that no one else is going to use? Like, there is so much to becoming a product owner, product manager. When we did that startup, I underestimated this whole time investment for that side completely, because that's what I did, even though I was meant to do the marketing. The problem I found was that if you spend too much time building it, as you read in any good startup book, you have the best product, but no one knows about it. So you've got to take that time away and move it into marketing and sales. You want to grow, you've got to get more customers. It's as simple as that. So that was a big lesson I learned. I should have just handed it off to my ex-co-founder and said, look, you're a co-founder, you need to take this on board so I can do the marketing and help grow the startup that way. Other challenges, so that's one. Another challenge that I found as well is learning how to say no to customers. That was a big thing that I had to learn.
Oh, yeah.
Customers, especially customers that pay you a lot, will go, I want this or I want that. And it's so easy to want to please them and say, yes, we'll build it. And then you put so much pressure on yourself to come up with that deadline. And then also if you have a development team, you put so much pressure on them. And now I've learnt I can't do that, promise too many things, and then we end up not delivering. And then it's really interesting with Shopify apps, because you'll find that you'll get customers that will ask you for things. They're not actually a customer. Because when you go back, you go, hang on, you haven't actually installed our app, but you're asking us to add this. They'll install your app and ask for a feature. You do the feature and then they'll uninstall your app. And you go, why did I waste a week of development time doing this? I've learned customers can be very fickle. You also need to set that clear boundary and protect yourself. The other problem, which is what I found with my ex-co-founder, is bad architecture. I love good architecture, because when you code and you don't think about architecture, you don't think about security, you don't think about scale. When you get more and more customers, for example, if you run your app on one server and then you get this massive amount of customers, but you haven't written your code to scale horizontally or vertically on that server, what are you going to do? You don't want to have to rewrite that thing. That's something that I've made sure, because I've developed our app, I've done that from the start, so that it will scale. And it's so nice when you can go, okay, I'll now create another load balanced container that can share that load, and you don't have to do anything else. The code's written so that you can just, for all the non-technical people, spread that load across 2 servers, and you don't have to fix up any code to do that. So good architecture is one thing.
Saying no to customers, we also had this situation before we built Smart Domain Sale. We were trying to do something similar, but more focused on content. And we used to have one big customer, which were happy to use our system to streamline the process of building and maintaining websites and adding content. And we had the same situation where we're they're effectively paying our bill. So We think about that feature maybe a week or two. And they were like really like, we need this now. We learned the hard way. You have to focus like, is this a feature they are asking which everyone really is going to use? Or is it really one specific feature only they want to have? And then, like you said, then suddenly they don't use it. Happened to us many times. Where even with the next project, Smart Domains, we had feature requests where we had lots of people asking random features. And I would use your solution if there was like this one thing. And I'm like, great. But then we were already a little bit more grown up. At some situations, I was texting them back, we can build this, but it's going to cost you like this amount, because this is going to be a feature which is completely solely for you. And then, of course, they would either say, oh, okay, then I'm not going to be your customer.
Oh, no.
So sometimes I can fully resonate with this. In the beginning, you are happy about every customer, but then you really find this balance between, oh, this is a feature like we gonna appreciate, and or like the majority of our customer base is gonna appreciate and use it, or is it turning into the next liability? I was working on a sports betting platform for esports a few years ago. We had such a feature creep. We were adding so many features, and at some point I was like, we need to maintain them. We are a team of five people. You cannot just spin out feature and see what is sticking. We have such a broad portfolio of small things you can do on our platform. But is it actually contributing to the main goal, getting people sign up for the sports betting part and bet on their favorite team and watch their streams? You need to find a balance between high traffic features, what's the low traffic features, and what can you revisit and say like, there are 2 customers using it and they make like 500 euros a month. We need to cut it out because every other week we have some issue with them at 3 a.m. because some process is not working. So this is also one thing I can totally resonate, because what features is really, really important and contributing to like the greater good, so to say. And one thing you mentioned regarding the architecture, I fully agree. But where do you draw the line? I mean, sure, you shouldn't write yourself in some corner where you're not going to be able to even scale vertically, which is the worst. Then you definitely did something wrong if you cannot even like go and say like, okay, I have a small box. Now I need a big box, and then I will survive the next 3 months. And this is also one thing where I'm usually pro, let's prepare the architecture and infrastructure that we can go in horizontally. So I have one client right now, which is lots of fun because it is a software as a service company and they're growing insanely well. They get lots of customers and lots of traffic. And of course, if you have customers signing up, it's somewhat unpredictable how traffic is going to hit you. So we managed to set up an architecture which is scaling automatically. If you're more technical on AWS, you can set up auto scaling groups, which is then spinning up automatically new instances of your application. And then again, it comes down to how is everything architectured and designed? Is it actually able to scale up? Going to that point where we could auto scale, it took us several months because there were still some things where we like, this is not working with auto scaling because it has to subscribe here. Somehow it needs to be visible there using DNS. There needs to be some configuration done in the database. So there's where do you draw the line between I've perfectly well designed this architecture, but it took me 5 years to get here. And now I read it so many times on Reddit where people were like, oh, great, you got 10 microservices per user. How would you, or maybe you have some feeling or a golden rule where this you need to do because you need to find the golden ratio between I can still scale, but I'm not in a corner where when suddenly instead of 10, I have 100 users, everything is blowing apart.
It's a very good point. When I've architected software solutions, I don't go too overboard. It's just really, I've just got a set of principles that I've learned over the years, not from me, but from other great software developers. For example, not having code here repeated 10 times all over the place. If you have to make a change to one particular code, you're going to have to make that code change in all those 10 spots. And then if you code like that, in very simple terms, that is going to be an absolute chaotic mess later on. Good software engineering principles. And then on the very deep side of things, architecture. It's just from my own experience, like using, like a queue, sending it to a queue, and then once it goes on the queue, your main code can still run and handle everything else. But then a subscriber can handle that request off the queue. So then you're alleviating pressure. You could have thousands and thousands of requests coming through. They all go on the queue. Someone else is handling it, but the main app is still running. So just stuff like that. Not anything too crazy, not like, I'm sure if you went into Spotify, their architecture is like an insane level of insane, because they have to be, because they got millions and millions and millions of users, same as Facebook. Nothing like that level, enough for a SaaS app. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember many years ago, I was building a solution for a client, and then suddenly they were like, oh, what about we have 100,000 orders a day? I'm like, yeah, this is not what we built here.
Yeah.
Because also for 100,000 orders a day, how much do you need to put into marketing? Are those figures, are those requirements even realistic? I also tend to build applications, especially for software as a service. I'm using lots of solutions which are managed. So because I know the pain how to maintain your own infrastructure. I've done this in the past quite a lot, where we had like servers, we had racks, where you have to also think about like, this is so insane. Like you have those numbers games. You know, like what percentage a hard disk might fail on average per year. But then you have thousands of servers, and every 2 weeks you need to send out someone like, hey, replace those hard disks. This is quite interesting, where I'm always like, do you want to go in that direction and become a data center? Probably not. And so I'm always like, let's go to my favorite cloud provider is AWS. I have to admit, they do a good job of giving you full control, but at the same time, they have like almost like it's kind of like McDonald's. You know what to expect. It's more like, okay, I can work with that. I can plan ahead. They clearly say this is going to cost you if you want to use storage, network traffic. What happens if you have between data centers network traffic, which a lot of things you would have to factor in if you build something yourself, but you have lots of flexibility. And their managed services is taking away this huge burden of setting up an operations team as well. Because going back to a cloud infrastructure, I usually take serverless services in the beginning if you don't know how much traffic you're going to have, because you always have like a baseline where you have costs. But then if you use serverless, where basically AWS is making sure that things only get started when they need to be started. Like if they see there's traffic coming in, then they turn on your application, Lambda, for instance, or like ECS and stuff like that, or like database solutions or file storage. You can go there, just use it and pay as you go. You don't need to plan ahead. You don't need to over provision. Use this. Keep this in mind, because when you use their services, they force you to think in a horizontal scaling way. You can ramp up your box size until here, but then that's it. Think about the different architecture as well. Their first product was SQS, which you mentioned, like the message queue, where I'm always like telling people, think of using a message queue, because it forces you to decouple components. If you can decouple components, you can scale better, because then you can have not just one person painting the wall, you can have 10 people painting the wall. This is a good way to approach the scalability issue, make sure that costs are under control. Think about what happens if you put your application behind a load balance and have a queue to distribute workload, which needs to be done in the background. If you make this conscious design decision, you should be good to go to a certain point. Sure, at some point you have different issues, but let's be honest, who's going to have like a huge monthly active users causing a certain load? And if you reach that point, you certainly make the money to get like better help to be able to get into the next tier of scaling.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love managed services. I've always said this to my wife. I don't want to get a call at, 1 a.m. saying the servers are down. And because you're managing it yourself, You have to hop on the box and have a look and try and diagnose it. I'm happy to pay a managed service. So if their infrastructure goes down, they've got to go and sort it out, send their engineers out and fix it, so that I don't have to have that call at 1 a.m. going, what's going on? So I'm a big fan of it. I use a managed service for Memberply as well for that reason. also for our customers, because if anything went down, you want a whole team of engineers looking at it than just one guy that might not be awake at that time.
I also tell our customers, we focus on software as a service these days. I'm always like, think of what is your core business. So jumping up at 1 a.m. and fixing a no space left on device error because something went rogue with logging. So I'm always like, make a conscious decision and focus on your business. Like you said, this is the best using managed service for this. I'm pretty sure you're also using a bunch of supporting services, which is taking care of monitoring and logging, which is also like at least like your predictor that things might go sideways. And then usually you have the thing under control. Oh, Doug, I'm excited speaking to you because I feel like we could continue for hours, especially those topics like building a good architecture. This is right next to my heart. What are your best recommendations for aspiring software as a service company founders? What would you tell them from a technical point of view? Also like anything else, but let's maybe focus on tech as well, because sometimes it falls a little bit short, even though it's also important. What's your key takeaway from today?
Yeah, great question. So for SaaS founders, I hope hearing what I went through can inspire you just to not give up, build that resilience, just keep working at it a bit every day. Before you know it, you'll blink and you would have built it. You've done it. The second thing is you can see what Christian and I talk about a lot with architecture. Really, really important. You don't have to over-engineer it. Before you jump in and just start coding it, just think about these things. And if you're not sure, ChatGPT, good software architecture, and just go down this massive rabbit hole of learning about it. From a technical viewpoint, I cannot highly enough. I've seen lots of projects go down badly because they didn't do this and they've kind of just coded it and then they've gone, oh, we need to add this new feature, but they can't because of the way that it's architected. They can't do it. You would relate to this, Christian, right? This kind of spaghetti code, unmaintainable piece of code to deliver this feature, which is duct tape behind the scenes, seconds to fall apart. And then a new developer comes on and then there's no documentation because it works. And then they get so many customers. It's too late now. I get these emails from Kyle Racky, I think he is, from Proposify. And I love what he writes. They're just about to launch version 3. And he tells this story of how he's got this SaaS app, lots of customers, doing really well, but they can't make any changes. So the engineering team tell him, we're going to have to rewrite from ground up. And he's gone, that's going to take ages. And sure enough, 3 years later, they've rewritten it. And it's just, I loved reading his stuff because it's just the stuff that you don't hear anywhere else. There's a lot of adversity you got to face behind the scenes.
Yeah, thanks for being here and being on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation and could take a little bit technical from it. Please leave a comment, drop a like, ask questions if you have questions about tech. See you next time.